Well, I like this question. It's a good question. What is mastership? In my humble opinion, and this is going to be a little mystical or esoteric for some of you people. Mastership. First of all, when you engage in something, you quickly realize that there's more to whatever you're doing than the just external form of it. Let's say you want to learn how to play music. At first, you think it's a guitar, and the guitar makes sounds because there's strings who vibrate and harmonize and make sounds, and then you put your fingers on it. Then you start to discover that there's more to music than the physicality of it. And the deeper you understand this, the more you start to realize there's a spirit. Now, those who master game, whatever game it is, understand the esoteric aspect. Even if they do not call it esoteric, they understand it as a spirit. And those who become masters are those who are able to become channels, vehicles for the spirit of their respective game. Wayne Gretzky, for example, who is clearly not only he's a patron saint of the NHL and hockey, understood this. And when I was a kid and I studied him, and every book that came out of this guy, my mom would buy to me. I just loved that dude because he was really the embodiment of mastership in a sport. His demeanor is humble, very respectful. There's no boastfulness, no arrogance. He's like so contained, right? And it was very clear when I would listen to him and I'd really study him, and it's like, how does the game work? And he would say these things that people don't understand. I just see it. I mean, how could you see it? Your eyes are not there. So once you push a little bit the concept, you're like, no, because he's not playing hockey at the same level as me, the amateur, is playing. He's not connected. He's not on the ice. He's connected to the spirit of the game at an energetic level. So he sees things because he can perceive them, like a Jedi can feel extending his feeling through the Force. This is exactly what he's doing. He's connected to the field of hockey, which is a spirit. And he's chosen to become a conduit of that spirit. And that's how he's achieved excellence. And it's the same for any person who achieves any heights, even if they were not able to tell you that. Because they don't understand it like that, that's what they're doing. You don't have a choice. Because any activity, it's an intelligence, it's a power. Right? Think about this. Let's say we go back to music. Music is a power. If you study mythology and you study the ancient Greek mythology, where music comes from, it comes from a god. A specific god created music and gave it to the man. So what does that say? It's a spirit. It's a God. And so if that God gave the music to the man, what's the man doing? He's clearly not inventing music because that's the God. So he's learning to tune himself, tune his nervous system, and tune his movements to the frequency of the God so he can become a channel of that spirit. And the more he removes himself, that means, quote unquote, his ego, his false persona, or not even that, anything that is not in tune with that God, the more he removes it, the more he's a conduit, a better conduit for that spirit, which means, well, imagine what kind of sound comes out of that dude. It was that God communicating to the people through him. So any person who's listened to music and has been touched by music in a deep way will clearly understand, you say it's not from this world. Stairway to Fucking Heaven, which is, in my humble opinion, the best rock and roll song ever. Not even, there's so many awesome songs, but this one is just at a whole other level. And my homeboy, the same guy I told you about with the guitar, he gave me an album when they were playing it live. I don't remember. It's an album. It's so fucking good. It's like, this is not normal. It's not human. It's obvious. It is so not human. And you can literally, if you close your eyes and you feel it, you'll see a thunderbolt coming down from somewhere you may not know into fucking Jimmy Page as he's fucking playing the guitar. It's fucking ridiculous. It's obvious. No fucking moral can come up with that. So it means that a higher aspect of the mind, if you feel more comfortable with that, is illumined, and Jimmy Page is a conduit, or became a conduit for that. Which would explain that why these fuckers are always fucked up and always take drugs, and imagine that intensity that goes through his nervous system, how he feels after. Everything after that is going to be boring, and he can't stop himself. He doesn't know how to ground it. He doesn't know how to stabilize it. And it's rock and roll, which means it's not sattvic, meaning pure. It's quite the opposite. It's pure rajas. It's pure fire. It's rajas mixed with tamas. Anyways, let's not get into that. He's going to just... He's wired. You understand what I mean? So they're going to take some kind of drugs to kind of depress their system, to kind of slow the fuck down, to just like, wait a minute, calm themselves down. They're going to self-medicate. It's not the point. Here's the point. Every art form has an entity, a power that is at the head of it. And if you don't understand that, it sounds too funny. Let's say there's an intelligence to it. And the master is the person who learns to embody that intelligence. And by intelligence, I mean a power. And become a conduit. And the training, what he's actually doing, he just doesn't know. And that's the difference between an expert and a beginner. The expert knows what he's doing when he's training, and the beginner doesn't know. So the beginner is trying to repeat a technique. The expert is no longer trying to repeat a technique. He's learning to remove himself so that the flow can pass through him. And he's seeing where there's blockages in the expression of the flow. For example, my right hip, my shoulder, my finger doesn't jump fast enough because it's a twitch, because something is blocked in my shoulder and the nerves aren't allowing it to pass fast enough. So how can I remove the restriction so that my fingers can express that sound? That's the difference between an expert and a pro, is that the expert understands that I'm removing myself from the way of that intelligence or that flow so that it can pass through me seamlessly. And that power, that frequency, is going to condition your nervous system and condition your muscular system, your hormonal system, all your body, in order to be able to express itself through you. I hope that came out properly. So this is my humble opinion about what mastership is, or excellence. It seems a little esoteric, but you'll exactly know what I'm talking about. That's why we love those fuckers. When you would see Kobe Bryant play basketball and he in a zone, that's not a mortal. This is a spirit. This is a God. It's not God with a capital G. It's a tiny God, but still it's a God. The flow and the dance and the motion and the movement and the groove, and he's in a flow. And everybody who understands anything about life will tell you need to get into the flow. So what's the flow? It's a current. It's a motion. It's like a wave. And you get in tune with that wave. There's no more you. There's the wave passing through you, whatever you is. You're just expressing it. So therefore, the wave is the God. And Kobe Bryant is a vehicle of that wave. So for us who are watching, it's like, well, that's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible for a mortal to do that, but it's not impossible for a God, small g, or the flow to be able to do that. And it's not impossible for a person who spent his life training to be a conduit of the flow. That's how I define mastership. And everything functions like this. And if you don't know that, now you know. Everything, no exception, you name it, even being a criminal, a porn star, an asshole, there's a spirit connected to it. And if you want to be the best asshole in the world, you got to become a conduit of assholeness. No, you really do. You can, if you want to be the best asshole, like the supreme asshole. If you're happy being a substandard asshole, it's fine. If you want to be a master asshole, you will have no choice but to dedicate yourself to the craft of being an asshole. And that will lead you to discover that there is something greater than yourself that is the asshole. And then you'll say, wow, how can I be that? And your love for being an asshole will take you on a journey to dissolve your so-called ego so that you can become one with the asshole. So, like I said, I'm using that example of assholeness to make you understand that everything is like that. Cameraman, you name it, I don't even want to go through it. Everything is like that. Everything is like that without any exception. The black mamba is the one who flows on the force of basketball. It's not Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is a geek, an intellectual geek who loves little details of where his finger is placed on a ball and angles and triangles on the court. He's a guy who's got a wife and kids, and he's got to deal with all this nonsense. He's got a mom, he's got a dad. The black mamba doesn't have a mom. The black mamba doesn't have a dad. The black mamba doesn't give a fuck about angles. The black mamba doesn't care about nothing. The black mamba is his avatar that plugs into the flow of basketball. So he surrenders Kobe Bryant to the black mamba, which we can say is quote unquote his higher self. He becomes the black mamba, which is I don't want to say one with the game, but let's say one with the game. It's his vehicle to become one with the game. Because Kobe Bryant is a mere mortal who may be constipated today, or may have a bad day, or may have an ingrown nail, or may have, a human. He may have had a fight with his girlfriend. The black mamba doesn't have a girlfriend. The black mamba is an avatar that only has one function: to tune into the flow of the NBA or the basketball and ride that. And we see the same phenomenon happening in multiple art forms. There's the everyday character, and then there's the so-called higher self. This is just a way I think you'll understand what I mean. And that character, that avatar, is what is able to go into the stream of that power. So you let go of the mortal and all his incompetencies, and you step into a character that has none of these limitations. Because its only concern is the flow of whatever craft that you're doing. It's designed from it. We can say it's a child of it. So Kobe Bryant didn't invent the black mamba. The black mamba belongs to the basketball arena or pantheon of gods. And it so happened that Kobe Bryant had a resonance with that. There is no Kobe Bryant. We think there's a Kobe Bryant. We don't care about Kobe Bryant. We have no relation with Kobe Bryant. We know the black mamba, and we associate that to Kobe Bryant. What we saw is not Kobe Bryant, it's the black mamba. And then the thing called Kobe Bryant would interface with us in interviews and whatnot, but nobody cares about that. Deion Sanders is the best example of that. He's like, there's Deion and there's prime time. See, so sometimes they're conscious of that. He's like, there's Deion, that's me, and then there's prime time. And then he would talk about prime time, literally as another thing. It's Deion talking about prime time, and it says prime time is the one who plays football. And he says, one time I went on an interview, and I didn't want to be prime time, and then we did the interview with some guy, and the guy didn't put it on TV because we don't want you, we want prime time. So prime time is the avatar that this guy uses or used to plug into the spirit of football in his respectful position and fulfill his function. So did Deion Sanders invent prime time, or is prime time a child of football? And it happened that so-called Deion Sanders had a key or a karma connection with prime time. It doesn't matter. It's food for thought. You can look at it, you can think about it. But prime time belongs to football. He's a saint of the football game, American football. Now, there's clearly a correlation between the person that's called Deion Sanders, prime time, and football. But what did we cheer for? Prime time. What's amazing? And he'll tell you it's prime time. He's got no shyness about this. So he understands the process at his own level, and he'll use his own language to say that. I'm bringing it, let's say I'm expanding on it a little bit, but the point is, that's how it works. And if Deion Sanders plays football, he sucks. It's prime time that plays football. And prime time has a specific way of walking, specific way of talking, specific way of fucking, specific way of playing the game, specific way of interacting with the players on the field, specific way of catching the ball, moving the ball. Everything about prime time is not Deion Sanders. So in order for Deion Sanders to become prime time, Deion Sanders has to go. So where does Deion Sanders go is another question. We can discuss this at another point. And then prime time enters, or prime time emerges. But one thing is for sure, it's prime time that flows in the game of football. It's prime time that has an understanding, an innate, inherent understanding of all the variables And the field of energy of the matrix of football, it's prime time because prime time is from that. So he knows where things are with his eyes closed because he is in that field. He lives in that field. And if prime time has a bad game, it's because Deion Sanders was in the way. Because prime time is the best cornerback ever. There's no question. That's prime time. He is a patron saint of football. That's what the Hall of Fame represents for me. What's the Hall of Fame? If we really genuinely take it as if it's just the elite and we remove the politics. These are the saints of the game. It's not Shannon Sharp, the guy who's on TV, who became the Hall of Famer. No, it's another guy that because he doesn't necessarily have a name like Prime Time, but it's not the same guy. It's the guy that is from the game. And when you see and you go to the Hall of Fame, why is it called the Hall of Fame? Literally, it's a Hall of Fame. And who are these guys? These are the gods of the game, which means there's a game, there's a field, and these are the pillars of it. They're not humans. So the question is, how does a mere mortal become immortalized? Well, that means you need to understand the nature of the game and surrender yourself to the game. And you also, it has to be your karma. That means you have the skill set, because I could do that, but I'm not clearly Shannon Sharp, which means I stand no chance, right? But that means you have to have the right setup to become one of that. You cannot want something that is not yours to have. But if you do, well, that means Shannon Sharp, the guy, the geek, the guy who's a loner, the guy who feels insecure, dies and gives birth to his version of prime time, who is part of the pantheons of gods of football and decides to, because now prime time now has to battle against the other gods so that he can rise the pyramid of the gods and become immortalized or at the higher top. So it's no longer about the humans. People have a hard time to understand that, but yet when you watch them, why do we watch them? Because they're like gods. It's impossible. Look at what he's doing. How do you do that? How do you just ram into something, flip over and hit yourself on the head and just jump back up? Like it's nothing to it. Yeah, there's nothing to it for that archetype, but the human being took a beating. And when they go off the field and that deity or prime time goes away, then you have a guy who's in pain, in agony and pain. Not prime time. Prime time doesn't have pain. So that's how one achieves mastership. Forget football, forget basketball, forget music, forget acting, it's always the same. There's a spirit. And as a devotee, this is the key word, of an art form, you love something, and it's your love for that thing that connects you to the spirit of it, and that allows you to have access to a higher part of yourself that is not bound by shit, piss, needs, urges, moods. And that part of yourself that is the lover in you is in love with a spirit, and that you need to become that lover. And that lover wants to melt or merge with the ocean or the spirit of that game. So the so-called science of love that I've been talking to you about is something that's everywhere, and it's in everything. The question is, how much does it take of yourself to become one with what you love? For example, basketball, it's not to diminish it, it's a small game compared to cosmic games. It's very small, basketball, if you understand what I'm trying to say. It's not to minimize it, but it's very small compared to engineering, for example. Or compared to medicine, for example. It's basic. This is a bigger deity. If we have to compare the deity of basketball to the deity of medicine, which one do you think is bigger? Do you see what I mean? So one may require more from you. So what you have to sacrifice at the altar is greater. And you may have to go dig deeper inside yourself so that you can sacrifice more of yourself so that you can merge with that spirit, if this makes sense.